Hello there. Welcome to English on the Road, an English podcast for English learners. In this podcast, I talk about geography, travel, and nature. So today's topic is 10 cool geography facts. Interesting facts or cool facts. You can say both. Basically means the same thing. And since this is an English podcast for English learners, I try to speak slowly and clearly. I tell my students to listen to podcasts to improve their English, but they often say that the people speak too fast. And when you have guests on the podcast, like multiple people talking to each other, they speak really fast. They use a lot of slang and idioms and expressions and phrasal verbs that are not extremely common and well known from English learners, because people learn English through a textbook or through a class, and they don't necessarily learn the daily phrases and expressions, which is okay. It's perfectly normal. You can focus on learning those things in your studies. But for this podcast, I'm just going to speak clearly and simply as best I can. If there's a word that I think is difficult, I might stop and explain it to you. But it's just designed for you to have on in the background, to listen and learn. And there's two different kinds of listening techniques when you're learning a language. You could do passive or active listening. And passive listening is when you are listening without taking notes. So you're listening maybe while you're washing the dishes or going for a walk. That's called passive listening. But there's also active listening. And active listening is when you're listening to a podcast and you have a piece of paper or a notebook and you are writing down new words or phrases that you didn't understand. And then you can look up those vocabulary online in a dictionary during the podcast or after. It's up to you. So, English on the Road. It's about geography, travel, or nature. But today it's about geography mostly. We're talking about 10 interesting geography facts. So I'm going to tell you the fact, and then I'm going to talk a little bit about the fact. And then I might give some just offhand comments or opinions. So without further ado, we can begin. The first interesting geography fact is that Papua New Guinea has the most spoken languages in the world. So you're probably familiar with the country Papua New Guinea. It's located in the Malay archipelago, close to Indonesia and Australia. I think it's actually the closest neighbor of Australia. And they have the most spoken languages in the world. So that's pretty crazy. Crazy in a good way. It's cool. So Papua New Guinea is located in the South Pacific and is made up of over 600 islands. So just one country, It has 600 islands. And each island has their own unique culture and language, sometimes multiple cultures and languages. In total, there are over 850 different languages spoken in Papua New Guinea. That's a lot of languages. Some of the most common are a bit hard to pronounce. I'll try my best, but some of the most common languages there are Tok Pisin and Hiri Motu, and also English. Those are some of the most common. But for most of the languages there, only a small group of people speak them. And one of the cool things about the linguistic diversity in Papua New Guinea is that it has led to a really rich and varied cultural landscape. So I use the term linguistic diversity to describe Papua New Guinea. And that just means linguistic, like language, diversity. So there's a lot of different languages. You can use it as an adjective phrase, linguistic diversity in Papua New Guinea. So each language is associated with its own customs, beliefs, and traditions. So the languages are kind of a link to the different cultures which exist there. However, all these different languages can make it difficult for people to communicate with each other. So, to solve the problem, they sometimes mix the languages together to create kind of like a lingua franca, which is like a common language. Lingua franca. It means common language. So Papua New Guinea is a really cool place to observe cultural diversity, linguistic diversity. And so that's why a lot of anthropologists are interested in studying Papua New Guinea. So an anthropologist is kind of like a kind of scientist. So the anthropologist studies anthropology, which is the study of human culture. So let's go on to the next cool fact. And it is that Mount Everest is not the tallest mountain in the world. Did you know that? Let me explain a little bit. I know it's kind of surprising. Mount Everest is actually not the tallest mountain. It's kind of surprising, but it's true. The title for the tallest mountain in the world actually goes to a mountain called Mauna Kea, which is located in Hawaii. So Mauna Kea doesn't look as tall as Mount Everest because most of it is underwater. But if you measure it from the bottom to the top, it actually is taller than Mount Everest. So Mauna Kea in Hawaii is over 33,000 feet tall. Sorry, I'm using feet, not meters. But Mount Everest is 29,000 feet. So there's a difference of about 4,000 feet, which is pretty significant when we're talking about big mountains. So even though Mount Everest is the highest point above sea level, it's not the tallest mountain because Mauna Kea has majority of its size underwater. Pretty cool, right? That's why I love these geography facts, because you can learn something new. It's a great thing to mention at a party If you're with your friends, having some drinks, you can say, "Hey, did you know Mount Everest is not the tallest mountain?" Okay, the third interesting fact. Iceland grows 5 centimeters per year. Iceland grows 5 centimeters per year. Yeah, it's pretty cool. Now, you might be wondering how a whole country can grow. Well, it has to do with the fact that Iceland is on top of 2 tectonic plates. Do you know that word? Tectonic plates. These are like huge parts of the earth that move around because of like things like earthquakes and volcanoes. So Iceland is on top of 2 tectonic plates, and they're called the North American plate and the Eurasian plate. And that's one of the reasons why Iceland has so many volcanoes. But the cool thing is that this volcanic activity, volcanic is the adjective for volcano, this volcanic activity causes Iceland to grow in size by about 5 centimeters every year. So 5 centimeters is pretty small. It might not sound like a lot, but if it's like 100 years, that 5 centimeters per year can really add up. I wonder how big Iceland will be 1,000 years from now. I wonder if it will keep growing forever or if it will stop. I don't know. But Iceland is a country that's constantly growing and changing. And it's one of the fascinating reasons why people visit Iceland as tourists. Okay, the next fact, fact number 4, it's kind of going in the opposite direction. The Pacific Ocean shrinks every year. Do you know what shrink means? It's a verb that means to get smaller. So the Pacific Ocean is getting smaller. Iceland is getting bigger. Pacific Ocean is getting smaller. So when we say the Pacific Ocean is shrinking, we don't actually mean it's getting smaller, so it's kind of tricky. But what we mean is the ocean's size is slowly becoming more compact. Compact. That means getting closer together. This is because the edges or the sides of the tectonic plates that make up the ocean are slowly moving towards each other. And as the plates move towards each other, they push up against each other and create pressure. This causes the ocean floor to rise up and causes the edges of the ocean to move closer together. So over time, this makes the ocean a little bit smaller in terms of surface area. But it's not happening quickly, so don't worry. It's happening very slowly, over millions of years. And we can't really notice the difference. It's just one of the interesting things about plate tectonics. We got Iceland, which is getting bigger, and the Pacific Ocean, which is shrinking. And there's another city, Mexico City. This is fact number 5. Mexico City is sinking. Not shrinking, but sinking. This means going down, like underwater, because Mexico City is on a lake. It's actually built on top of a lake. Yeah, that might sound crazy, but it's true. So here's some history. Back in the 14th century, when the Aztecs were living in that area, they built their city on an island in the middle of a lake called Texcoco. The lake provided a source of water for the city, and it also protected the Aztecs from their enemies. So it's interesting, they called it Texcoco, and today we call it Mexico. And when the Spanish arrived in 16th century, they drained the lake. So they took the water out of the lake, and they built Mexico City on the dry lake floor. However, there was still water underneath the ground, I believe. So today, the city is sinking about 8 inches per year, which is actually quite a lot. So Mexico City is shrinking, or not shrinking. Mexico City is sinking, the Pacific Ocean is shrinking, and Iceland is growing. So we've covered 5 interesting facts. Let's go on to number 6. This one is about the Malay archipelago. So what does that mean? Malay, it just refers to a part of the world, like Malaysia, Indonesia, and Philippines. An archipelago is a collection of islands. So the interesting fact is that the Malay archipelago is the largest in the world. So this is the largest archipelago. Archipelago is fun to say. I like that word. The Malay archipelago is located in Southeast Asia and includes over 25,000 islands. And some of the countries there are Indonesia, Malaysia, Philippines, and Singapore. They're all part of the Malay archipelago. So it's so large also because of these tectonic plates, which we talked about with Iceland and the Pacific Ocean. These tectonic plates, they really influence geography, because the Malay archipelago sits on the boundary or the border area of 2 tectonic plates. These plates are constantly moving, and their movements over millions of years have caused a lot of islands to grow, as it were. And it's a great place. That's actually where I live right now, on the Malay archipelago. That's where I'm recording this podcast from. It's cool because they have so many different plants and animals species, which are found nowhere else in the world. Because a lot of these islands, like we learned about with Papua New Guinea, they're all separated from each other. They have a kind of isolation, which allows evolution to create unique species. A lot of hard words there. Isolation, evolution, species. I hope you know what they mean. So yeah, there you have it. Fact number 7. There's a state in the United States called Kentucky. Kentucky. You might know this from the restaurant KFC. It means Kentucky Fried Chicken. But for some reason, I think the company said it doesn't actually stand for Kentucky Fried Chicken. I think it used to, but they changed it, or they want to separate themselves from Kentucky because they're like a global fast food restaurant. I don't know. But to me, KFC means Kentucky Fried Chicken. And Kentucky has the most caves in the world. Do you know the word cave? C-A-V-E. Cave. So these are like, places underground. They're called caves. So Kentucky is home to over 4,000 caves. And it's probably more because a lot of caves are undiscovered. But at least 4,000. One of the reasons why Kentucky has so many caves is because of the geology. So geology is a word similar to geography. Geography is more about like maps, and it's a more general term. But geology, it refers specifically to rocks, like the science of rocks and minerals, I guess. I don't know. But geo, G-E-O, it just means earth. So that's why they're geography and geology. Excuse me. But the state of Kentucky is on top of limestone rock. Limestone. And limestone is like one of the main rocks which has caves because the rock easily dissolves from water. If you run water through limestone, the limestone rock can eventually fade away. So the caves in Kentucky are also home to lots of interesting plants and animals. Some of them are quite happy living in the dark in the caves. But I don't know about you. I'm not brave enough to go into these caves. I find them a little bit scary. Maybe I've seen too many horror movies about caves. Okay, number 8. Istanbul, the city in Turkey, Istanbul, is the only major city located on 2 continents. That might sound surprising, but it's true. So Istanbul is on both European and Asian continents. And the city is separated by the Bosporus Strait, or like a river. And that's kind of like the border, I think, between Europe and Asia. And because of this, it's been a really important city for trade and culture for thousands of years, going back to ancient times. And it has been ruled by many different empires and civilizations. So Istanbul, it's a really fascinating place to visit for history, culture, and also geography, if you want to be on a city that's on 2 continents. Fact number 9 about my country, Canada. Canada has the most lakes in the world. Did you know that? Canada is known for its natural beauty and outdoor activities. But what people don't realize is that Canada has over 3 million lakes. 3 million. And again, it's because of the country's geography. So I'll give you a little bit of the history of that. So the Canadian Shield, which covers much of the country, is a rocky, mountainous area that was shaped by glaciers during the last ice age. The glaciers left behind many lakes and rivers, which make up much of the country's landscape today. So And many of these lakes are popular for recreation, like camping, swimming, fishing. And some of the most famous lakes are the Great Lakes, Lake Ontario, Lake Superior, Lake Erie. But there's just so many. You'll be driving through Canada, through the country, and there's just lakes everywhere. If you go look on Google Maps and you go over Canada and you just zoom in, you'll see that it's like all you see are lakes. There's so many of them. Okay, fact number 10. Point Nemo is the least accessible place on Earth. So accessible means that you are able to go there. You're able to visit, to access. Point Nemo is the least accessible place on Earth. That's because it's farther away than any other point on Earth. The nearest land is over 1,600 miles away in every direction, which means it's really difficult to reach by boat, or obviously you can't swim there, so just by boat or even by plane. So Point Nemo, it's an important spot for scientific research. Scientists use it to study ocean currents, marine life, and the effects of climate change. So if you're interested in marine biology or the ocean, you can do some research about Point Nemo. So I researched these interesting geography facts using ChatGPT. Have you tried this? You can go on ChatGPT and you can learn about everything. It's really impressive. So I just typed in the geography fact and it gave me some more information that I was able to use to talk to you guys. So let me just summarize the 10 facts we learned today. Number 1, Papua New Guinea has the most spoken languages in the world. Number 2, Mount Everest is not the tallest mountain in the world. Number 3, Iceland grows 5 centimeters per year. Number 4, the Pacific Ocean shrinks each year. Number 5, Mexico City stands on a lake. Am I on 5 or 6? I don't remember. The Malay archipelago is the largest in the world. Kentucky has the most caves in the world. Istanbul is the only major city located on 2 continents. Canada has the most lakes in the world. And Point Nemo is the least accessible place on Earth. So there you go, 10 cool geography facts. So I hope you enjoyed the podcast. English on the Road. It was great to talk about these interesting facts because I love geography. And I hope you find other good ways to improve your English. So if you listened this far, then good job. And I hope you enjoy the rest of your day.